We haven't recorded since we saw Taylor Swift.
We haven't.
Best Night of My Life.
Best Night of My Life.
Does anybody have
10 minutes? Oh, I fucking lost my shit. And then you realise actually there's no reprieve in that song. It's just words after words after words after words.
And you stood the whole time and you sang the whole time. You sang every word.
Felt like I was in church. I understand those videos now where people feel moved by the spirit to sing.
Praise.
That's me doing the all too well 10-minute version.
Hi, welcome back to the H0rny Book Club.
Hello.
I'm Ellen.
And I'm Alice.
And this week it's the Q2 report.
Everyone, get your finances in orders. It's the end of Q2.
Q2's over and we're here to report.
Yes.
Basically.
So our quarterly wrap up. We're going to be wrapping up, discussing all the books we read between April and June of 2024.
And actually I'm annoyed because I've read 3 books so far in July. And
what the fuck?
I want to talk about them, but it will have to be saved for another time.
I've only read one, but I really want to talk about it. And I'm like, I really want to talk about it. Will I be remembering it in the end of September when we next do one? 7 Year Slip by Ashley Poston. Really good.
Before we begin, Alice is having some wine. Follow us on Instagram at the H Book Club. Follow us on TikTok at HBC Podcast. Subscribe to us on YouTube at HBC Podcast.
Turn the notification bell on.
Turn the notification bell on to be notified when we post. Like all our videos.
Do
Please.
it.
Like all the shorts, because we're doing shorts now as well. Crazy. You can send us emails, hornybookclub@gmail.com, if you want to. We're interested. We're interested to know what you have to say. If you're our biggest fan, which I think you might be, let us know via email.
Or DM us on Instagram.
Yeah, or DM us on Instagram.
Haven't had any DMs in a while, guys. I'm sad about it.
Where's my DMs?
I miss you. I miss you all. Come back to me.
And you can give us money on Ko-fi if you want. The link's in the description. Up to you.
Smashed it.
Thanks, everyone.
So how many books have you read?
It's 14.
It's 14.
So 13 in Q1, 14 in Q2. July so far, 3.
Fucking dickhead.
Smashing it. I regret doing that. That's
13 in Q1, 13 in Q2, 1 in July. I'm sad.
How does it feel to be a big loser?
It feels really sad to be a big loser because I had one thing about myself that I was sure about, and it's that I'd be reading more books than you. And now
it's all gone out the window.
It's all gone out the window. Just busy.
Yeah,
and
you are having a very busy year.
But I feel sad for it. Like, I want to be reading more.
Yeah.
And I feel like in my downtime, I'm not prioritising reading enough because I'm just not in, like, that mode of reading. And I need to...
Whereas I have been a bit, like, even when I was really busy for the whole of June, I still read 5 books in June. Like, I was expecting to read 0, but I was still just, like... Oh, partially it's also I was trying not to be on my phone.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I'm just reading instead. I'm just forcing myself to read books. And yes, it means I'm reading a lot of romance books on the Kindle, but it's fine.
As you should be.
Doesn't matter.
I'm gonna get a new Kindle next month because you reading these romance books on Kindle Unlimited and on Kindle has been like, that's what I need. You know, I feel like that's what I need.
That's how I felt. Like when I had COVID, I was literally like, I need to read a romance book. And I started like 4 different things. I was Googling like best ice hockey romance books, Kindle Unlimited, because I was like, I have to read one that is good and will satisfy me. And I started like 4 and I was like, these are all shit. And then, I read the one that I read because Amy had it downloaded. It's not on Kindle Unlimited. Amy had bought it and I read it and I was like, yeah.
But I feel like I can't buy, like I did have a look and I was like, I don't want to buy that box set of books. You know, I want to just get a Kindle. They'll be like $2.99 on the Kindle, I assume, right? How much were they when you
it was $2.99.
Yeah, and then just, do stuff like that because I feel like I actually feel like I'm putting a bit of pressure on myself to be like reading more like lit fic or more like serious-y books. And actually at the moment the books that I'm reading that I'm really enjoying and getting through really quickly are just like romance. And I feel like that's what I need for the time being. I need to just get on the Kindle and aggressively tap through and stay up really late while Dan's asleep in the pitch black. But the Kindle light is on. You know, I can turn the lamp off but still be reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was me.
Like yesterday, I really wanted to read and I got in bed with the intention to read, but the book I picked to read was a hardback and I just couldn't be bothered to lift it. Do you know what I mean? I was like,
massively.
I don't want to use both my hands. I want to lie on my side.
Yeah.
And tap, tap, tap.
The only thing I find with mine, because it's not actually Kindle, it's like a Fire tablet.
It's a massive tablet, yeah.
That when I hold it, I end up with my hand like this. And so I end up getting, if I lie in bed on my side, I'm like holding it like this. And then after a while, I'm like, oh.
I want to get one of the remotes.
I love that for you. And the stand, like clip stand and the remote. To be able to read the Kindle without holding it.
I know.
Really
And I would love to, because I would love to read 60 books now.
Okay.
My goal for the year at the beginning was 75. Something crazy would have to happen.
So what are you on? 27?
Yeah, 27. So I'd have to read 50 books in the rest of the year, basically, if I wanted to do 75.
So if you want to do 60,
But I
what
could
is it?
do
It's
60.
35?
Yeah, which I could do. I just need some series. I need some
It's only 7 a month.
Yeah. And that's below
that was,
average
low
last
for
year.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just need some. So if anyone's got any good romance in particular recommendations.
Yeah, of series, the interconnected series
Yeah.
where you see all of the characters in each book.
Yeah, or the Cruel Prince series where they're short and snappy. Please do send them our way because I need them.
Yeah, so I'm on 30 books so far. My current average rating, 3.74.
Wow.
It's high. I am rating things. I'm having a great year. I'm reading a load of stuff I really like. I'm rating things really highly. It's great.
Mine's 3.62. Which
So
is
it's-
low for me.
Yeah, that's
but
low. So it's very interesting because I'm basically mine's 3.75, which for me is quite high.
Yeah.
But for Alice is very low.
Yeah. But to be fair, saying that, last quarter, our Q1 wrap up, I was saying, I read quite a lot, but I was having I was reading bad books.
Yeah, you're having a
Where
bad time.
I would say everything since April has, apart from the one I rated 3 stars, but it's actually a 2 stars. I just couldn't bring myself to be reading shit books, so I tricked myself. That was a 3 stars. We'll come to that in a minute.
Myself.
Apart from that, my lowest rating is a 3 stars, whereas the quarter before, every other book was a 1 or 2 stars. So I'm happy with the quality of the books I'm reading, but I'm just not reading very much. But I know I wouldn't even say I'm in a slump. I'm just not reading. It's not just springing to mind as something I should do. But then whenever I do it, I'm like, oh, this is great. And I'm like, yeah, fucking obviously, you crazy idiot. You love reading.
You're not going to stop reading, are you?
No.
That'd be really bad for our friendship.
It'd be quite bad for this podcast as well. We come on this week, we're talking about this book. I'm like, I haven't read it.
I'm like, ooh.
I've actually forgotten how to read. No, that won't happen. Don't worry.
Okay. Let's start with my favourite book of the quarter, shall we? And I guarantee you this is possibly going to be my favourite book of the year, unless something crazy happens. Unless the Sally Rooney is as good as they say it is.
Yeah.
Which I don't believe that it is. The Ministry of Time by Callie Ann Bradley. Now, everyone, stop the podcast, buy this book, read it, come back to the podcast. I'm obsessed with this book. I'm still obsessed with this book.
I know.
It was like tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, if tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow had time travel and historical men that I want to have sex with.
I just don't agree.
No, you rated it really high.
I know. I rated it 4.25. I think on reflection it's a 4.
Why?
I just haven't thought. I don't think about it. I just don't think about it.
This is so my feelings. This is
But everyone I know, my sister's read it and she's obsessed with it. Yeah. People loads of people I know are absolutely obsessed with it and talk about the writing style all the time. But I'm I just don't I don't know, it just didn't. I appreciate it as a very good book.
Yeah.
But it just didn't grab me. It didn't punch me in the face. And I love when books punch me in the face. You know what I mean? And it did. This book fucking had you. I was has you by the throat. This book has you by the throat.
Yeah. If you haven't read it and you haven't heard of it, this book is about a woman whose name we don't ever find out. Is that right? Who basically starts a new job, near future dystopia, starts a new job a secret job in the government where she basically is a bridge, is what they call it, for a historical figure that they've discovered how to do time travel. They're bringing certain historical figures back from the past to the present to basically, so they say, try and learn stuff from them. And there's a group of them, there's a group of bridges and a group of historical people, and she ends up with looking after this man called Commander Graham Gore, who was a real man.
He's also a fictional shark.
Who was on the Erebus, which is a famous expedition ship, IRL. And they basically they were trying to discover stuff in the Arctic, and then
everyone died.
They all died because the ship got stuck in the ice. He gets brought to, I don't know what year we're supposed to assume it is, somewhere
2100, something like that, nearish.
Do you
future.
think?
I think it's that near. Yeah,
I was thinking closer.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
Say 50 to 150 years in the future from it.
And they're in London, and it's kind of it's a bit of an environmental dystopia whereby they're sort of now we're in the big rain period. It's one of those. I find it hard to say why I was so obsessed with it. I was very obsessed with the character of Graham Gore, the way she wrote him, the way she described him, the way he spoke, and sort of like his story of like they time traveled him out of his present before everyone died, and therefore he discovers that everyone that he knew in his life on this ship, they all died, and he didn't die technically because he got brought to the future, and his sort of struggle with that. I just love that. I think that's so interesting. All the stuff about him discovering stuff in the present is so, I felt, again, very interesting, quite nuanced, and not like sort of really like hack and like overdone like it could have been, because that's like a quite common theme in media. People from the past just, you know, discovering like an iPhone and being like,
what is this? Yeah.
But it was more like she told him about, what is it that she tells him about? Not 9/11.
Auschwitz.
She tells him about Auschwitz. And then his like, how would you, if you like lived in a world before all of these things had happened, and now you live in a world after all of these things had happened, how do you then process that all of this stuff had happened in basically like a blink of an eye of you being time traveled by the government?
Yeah. Like, yeah, you didn't
Crazy.
invent time travel. People just showed up and brought you here. You know what I mean? Like,
and then they're like, oh yeah, that really horrible thing. Sorry. That is the thing that happened.
Yeah.
Lol. And he can like Google obviously everything in the world.
yeah.
Crazy. And then it's basically like a kind of a love story between the main character whose perspective it's from, and Graham Gore, which I was obsessed with. There's like the cast of characters, so like the other people who work at her job, but then also the other historical people. Arthur.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. What's the girl called?
Can't remember. There's like a woman, there's kind of like three of them.
Yeah, and she was from the plague years.
They were like, yeah, we found her just like trapped in an attic. So we thought, let's bring her along.
Bring her in, yeah.
I just loved it. I loved her writing style. I loved the level of characterization. I loved the fact that we didn't really know that much about the main character, but everything's from her perspective. There's a twist at the end that I actually won't spoil.
No.
That I was like, didn't see that coming.
I didn't see it coming, but I'm like, I don't think it had the right amount of payoff for me either. I felt like it was a bit I don't think she did think about it as she was writing it and was halfway through like, oh my gosh, yeah, this should be it. But like it was almost when it's a twist, when there like aren't enough crumbs, that it's like, oh my god, yeah, like those are my favorite kind of twists. You know, I can think of like one
like she didn't
crumb.
set it up well enough.
Yeah, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying. I mean, and also I guess a little bit you're like, why?
Yeah.
I guess because it's kind of like the sort of perpetual time loop that you end up being in, which is a really interesting concept.
If you travel back in time or you travel forward in time, can you change the past and the future and the present, blah, 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 blah. It's kind of like butterfly effect kind of stuff. And I thought it was really well done. And I loved the very ending, like the last, like the epilogue, if you will. That was amazing. Yeah. Like that really, really was great. But I just was like, she really irritated me, the narrator. Like I felt like she was really like letting herself be naive and ignorant to make herself happy. Yeah. You know, she was kind of being like, whatever, you know, about other stuff, about other problems going on in the world. Yeah. To the point that I was kind of like, but come on. I thought she was quite selfish. Yeah. But I don't think they were teeing it up for her to be like a slightly unlikable narrator. Right, yeah. You know, when you read books and there's a narrator that you don't like in it, but you're like, but I meant to not like you. I wasn't a huge fan of her, but I felt like I was meant to be a fan of hers.
Oh, that's interesting, because I sort of felt like she was meant to be very neutral. That's how I felt like I was, the way I was reading it was that I was like, she's just kind of like, these are just all the things that I did. Yeah. And you can sort of take it however you want. Yeah. And you're right. I would say she isn't that likable, because you are like, get a clue, Claire. Yeah. It's the past.
It's the future.
It's the future. It's the present. But at the same time, maybe if you were living in a time like that, where one time travel inexplicably now does exist, the environment's completely fucked. You've got no idea what you're doing. Maybe you would be like, I'm just burying my head in the sand and having sex with this man from the past.
I would 100% do the same thing. Yeah. But I just felt like I'm all for being selfish. I say it all the time, is that like, you know, everyone's got to do what they can for the environment, but like, if I don't have the energy to recycle 100% correctly one week, I'm not killing the planet. That's Jeff Bezos. Do you know what I mean? Like, and you've got to be kind to yourself sort of thing. And I know she was doing that. I just didn't vibe with her at all. And to the point that I was hoping for a really long time, or the romance is going to be between Graham and someone else.
I know. Which I did think she laid
she
the
teed it
groundwork
up for it. Yeah,
yeah, I agree.
But I think she's an incredibly talented writer. It was a great premise, and the character of Graham was fantastic. I understand why you love him, but yeah, it just didn't. It was one of those things where like, this is really good. This is a really good book, but it hasn't.
Do you think this is like when you didn't rate Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow 5 stars? And then
I didn't rate Tomorrow and Tomorrow 5 stars and then continued to think about it every single day for the rest of the year. And I have not thought about Ministry of Time, really.
Did you know what I meant when I said it had Tomorrow and Tomorrow vibes? Just kind of in the writing style, not in the plot.
No, not in the plot, but I do think, in the writing style. And you see that, and I really enjoyed the writing style. But, like in Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, it's kind of that thing of like, the writing style teased them up to be imperfect characters, but you have so much sympathy and empathy for everyone in Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Whereas in this, I felt like I had sympathy and empathy for everyone else and not for the narrator at all. And then when you're gaining so much emotion towards the other characters, then it makes it stand out more that I don't feel that for the narrator, especially when she's talking in first person.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think I agree with you, definitely, but I think that doesn't really bother me, because I feel like because she's the narrator, I'm almost like she is, for me, is the like conduit to tell me the story of these other people. And yeah, she's like heavily involved because she's having sex with him, but ultimately I'm like, she is just someone who like all of this was like thrust upon her. And she's telling the story, and I'm like, I'm not sure I care to like connect with her emotionally. But also that's how I read, because I'm like, if I'm not emotionally connected to the characters, it doesn't bother me that much.
But I always think then with characters like that I mean, it's a very, very different book that I'm about to say. But The Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, very different. And I said this, I loved that series last year, but I felt like the main character in that was only there to be a narrator. Like that, I felt so much less for her than I felt for everyone else in the book, which is weird because I'm with her all the time. She's narrating it for me. But it did just feel a bit like that in the terms of being like, oh, this could, maybe if it was in the third person, I'd feel a bit more about it. I'm not sure. I just didn't connect with her. So I wasn't rooting for her. And when she's so involved in the story and you're not, I wasn't not rooting for her. I was just like, I only care about the other three.
Yeah.
I care about the three expats, they call them, the three people from the past who are now in the present.
Yeah.
But then that being said, the very, very ending, when it's kind of not the main plot twist, but it's kind of a smaller stylistic plot twist, I guess. I was like, that's sick. But it just didn't have the plot twist payoff of being like, that, oh my God, that's amazing. That makes all of the things that I've been thinking this whole time make sense and worth it. I was just like, you're fucking clever. That's really cool. And I enjoy this. Well done. But like, I'm not like, I'm not, I haven't really thought about it. Which is, and because you're obsessed.
So
you're obsessed.
It's really sad for me.
I can't believe you think it's going to be your top book of the year.
Well, we're halfway through the year and nothing's beating it so far.
I know.
Well, it's my only 5-star. We'll see. We'll see what happens. There's time in the autumn. Autumn is the time for big reads. Okay, what about you?
I think my favourite book of the year so far, which I think is definitely going to be in my top 5, but I don't think it's going to be my number 1, I have a feeling, is Strong Female Character by Fern Brady. I fucking loved that book.
Slay.
I thought that book was so well done.
Yeah.
Like the way that, so basically it's Fern Brady, who is a Scottish comics memoir.
Didn't I talk about it because I read it at the end of last year?
Yeah, but it wasn't in your top 5. It was like your number 6
top 10?
or something.
Yeah, great.
So it's Fern Brady's memoir. She's a Scottish comedian and she is autistic, but she didn't get her diagnosis until very recently. So it's kind of about her life growing up without an autistic diagnosis and like how her behaving differently made life difficult for her and her family and all of this stuff. And it was just really, really well done, like really interesting kind of these horrible stories that really like hit home and made you think, oh my gosh, like fucking hell. But then backed up by stats and by research, but the way it kind of all flowed together, I think was really, really impressive.
Yeah.
So she would tell a story, she would then link it to and I did this, or my reaction was this because of my autism, and then 85% of people blah 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 blah. Like the way it all flowed together was really, really impressive, I think, as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, there were just a couple of bits where I was like, ow, 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 owie. Some things that really just hit home and made me feel very, very seen at points, like the stuff about holidays in particular, about not going on holiday because of how the changes to your routine can be so stressful that you kind of just shut down. And I was like, oh yeah, I never thought of it like that before. Like, and just, yeah. But also a really like positive book, I think, about autism and being neurodivergent and all of that, about how some things she, in particular, her not kind of bowing to societal pressures because they don't make any sense to her, so therefore she doesn't acknowledge them. Like, they don't make any rational, logical sense to her, so she's like, why would I do that?
Yeah.
Like, she talks about sex, her family were Catholic, and she talks about her kind of family putting pressure on her to like not use tampons, for example, when she got her first period, because that's gonna, you're not gonna be a virgin anymore. And she was like, that's fucking stupid.
What are you on about? Yeah.
So I'm not going to do that. And, talks about the patriarchy in particular and misogyny, and how like she feels quite lucky that she doesn't deal with a lot of the self-esteem issues that other women deal with because they don't make any sense to her. So she can't they don't factor into her life. And I was like, that's like a really...
It's so interesting.
It's so interesting. And it's just such a really nice, positive exploration of what it's like to be neurodiverse and autistic in particular. And it just felt, I literally finished it and did a little clap because I was just like,
you said
that was so good, because I was just like, that was amazing.
Yeah.
I think it's a really important book for people to see, like, your life doesn't have to look the way that everyone else around you does for you to be successful and be happy.
Yeah.
Like, it is that thing of like success and happiness and peace looks different for every single person.
Yeah.
And so like, do what you've got to do to live your best life.
It's really good. And I, possibly she didn't write it with this being the intention, but I think it is very accessible.
Yeah.
Like, my mum, she didn't read it, she listened to an audiobook, but like I got her to listen to it because I thought she would think that it was interesting. And I feel like she was like, I've learned loads of stuff about autism. And I was like, that's really like good.
Yeah.
As like a woman who, she mostly reads American women's fiction and like Anne Cleves.
Classic.
Do you know, I mean, it would not be the thing she would normally read, but because I recommended it so highly and because it is in an accessible way of, like you said, a combination of real facts, personal stories, funny moments, very hard-hitting moments, all in a really well-written package, that it's just like a great thing to like be able to give to people and be like, this is what lots of people are experiencing that you have no idea about.
Yeah. But it's something you can give to people and be like, you will enjoy this book as a book and as a memoir. It's because it's not like you have to sit there and learn. No. It doesn't feel like that, but you also do learn.
You are learning.
Which is what I love about a good memoir, when a memoir very much feels like a story and feels like almost like a conversation. But apparently the audiobook is amazing. I know lots of people who've listened to it.
Because she reads it.
And it's meant to be really like even more so. But it's just, it's incredibly impressive book, and it's a really like hopeful book. And I think obviously there's so many conversations now going on about people getting diagnosed, particularly women getting diagnosed with autism and ADHD and other forms of being neurodivergent. Neurodivergent.
Either, I think.
Either. Whenever I say neurodivergent, I'm always like divergent, and then I think I'm saying the wrong thing. But no, I don't think I am. I think it's Veronica Roth. But yeah, there's so much conversation, isn't there, about people getting diagnosed with things later in life. It's because it's, fucking popular now. It's trendy to be autistic and stuff. And then it's just really, I think it'd be really hopeful for a lot of people to read stuff like that of someone who was diagnosed late in life. And it just shows the struggle that so many women have had in terms of like basically masking.
And it presents so differently.
And it presents so differently in women than it does in men. And then when the masks slip of how catastrophic that is when you're a child and you're a teenager, when you're fucking learning and growing up. So you like reinforce the mask, you make it stronger and stronger, and you at a detriment to yourself. If you get diagnosed, or if you like self-diagnose or learn about these things later in life, it can be almost like a whoa, like sort of thing, or like letting that mask down. But I just think it's a really like it's really great to read about someone who got diagnosed later in life, and but still showing as you look back and being like, oh, here were the symptoms.
And also
it's not like she's decided at 30 like, I think I might be autistic.
Yeah. And also not being like, I got diagnosed and now my life is perfect.
Now
and
everything's fine.
Fixed.
And I never deal with any symptoms anymore.
Yeah. And I never just like randomly smash anything up anymore. And she's
Yeah.
like, no, I still do. But at least I know why I'm doing it now.
Yeah.
I'm not just like, am I literally losing my mind?
Yeah.
Highly recommend that. Even if you are not really into non-fiction and think that you won't like it, it is the kind of non-fiction that I think both of us really like, that is non-fiction that kind of reads like fiction. It's very well written, and it just is like a really good story and a really interesting thing to read.
Yeah. Do you have a worst book or a most disappointing book?
Possibly my most disappointing book is Wild Love by Elsie Silver. There's a whole episode on that you can listen to where I will explain to you why. The other one is also non-fiction. Yeah, this Learning to Think by Tracy King.
Oh, yeah.
I read it because we did an event with her. The reason I was disappointed is it was quite hyped up by people at my work who had read it. And the sort of premise of it is about, it's called Learning to Think because she basically like grew up in almost, I don't think it's technically a cult, but a very like culty type, very religious background. It's sort of about her learning to not have those beliefs anymore and like think for herself, learning to think. But it's also about her dad getting murdered. And or maybe he wasn't murdered. It's very muddled. So like I thought it was going to be basically like Educated by Tara Westover,
a great book,
or that book by the girl who was in the LDS, which I also read, Megan.
I know,
Phelps Roper. Is that her name?
Yeah.
Read that as well 8 years ago.
Yeah.
But I thought it was kind of going to give that of like much more background about the church and all this kind of stuff. But it's sort of about living in poverty. It's sort of about being from Birmingham. It's sort of about her mum basically finding solace in this church. And then the second half is about how her dad died because he like randomly got into a fight with a bunch of teenagers, got punched in the head, fell down, smacked his head on the ground, died. That's when she's like, I think 9 or 10. So obviously that greatly impacts her life. A lot of the book, it's sort of like she starts writing the book, and then in the book she's kind of like, as I was writing this book, I realised that I wanted to know more about my dad being dead. So she gets back in touch with all of the guys who were present when her dad died, except for the one who actually hit him, I think. She gets in all these conversations with these guys, and she talks to them on Zoom about how they're like, it kind of, this whole court case kind of ruined my life, but also kind of didn't ruin my life, and all these things. And you can tell from the way I'm talking about it, it's really like muddled.
Yeah.
It's really confusing. And I feel like she started it with one idea of being like, this is going to be about growing up in a really like heavily like prohibitively religious background where you're blocked from learning a lot of information, all that kind of stuff. She started off thinking it was going to be about that, and then it becomes much more about her dad, and then her coming to terms with the death of her dad, and her coming to terms with the existence of all these people who were involved in the death of her dad.
Yeah.
And I feel bad, but I didn't think it was that well written. I think it needed someone to, again, and we said this last time, it needed a much better edit.
Yeah.
Someone needed to go through it and
shape it almost,
pick it all apart, put it all back together. I was just kind of like, oh, now we're talking about this?
It's like two different books.
Now
almost.
we're talking about this again. Now we're back here. Now she's trying to like make parallels between the one thing and another thing that I don't think really works. And yeah, I was just really disappointed because like multiple people had told me that they thought it was really good, and I was just kind of like, I don't really know what we're trying to say here. So what about you? What would you say in terms of disappointing? Bad or disappointing? Or
I think the worst book I've read in this queue was the first book I read in this queue, which was Meeting Millie by Claire Ashton.
Yes.
If you listen to Q1 wrap up, I'm like, but I've just read a book that wasn't a 2 stars. It absolutely was a 2 stars on reflection. This is the book where I'm like, I was desperate to read a good book that I rated it higher than it was, and on reflection I'm like, that's really bad.
I feel like this was very random as well. Like it wasn't something I'd heard of. It really like came out of the blue for me.
Just saw it
when I see things on your story graph and I'm like, what
the fuck
what's
is
she
going
doing
on?
now? Yeah.
No, it's a Kindle Unlimited book. Because I was looking for like romance series, and the second one was actually what popped up, and it looked quite good. And I should have just read that one because they're interconnected. But I'm glad I didn't. I guess no.
And what if you'd read just the second one?
If I'd read the second one, it'd be good. But then what if I read the second one, it was good, and went back to the first one?
And then you were like, oh.
But basically, it's about these two women. It's a sapphic romance about two women who went to university together, were like best friends. And then one of them was very obviously in love with the other one at the time. And then they fell out, grew apart. They haven't seen each other in a really long time. The one who is not a lesbian comes back to that town. They meet up, they rekindle their friendship, and then they fall in love.
Right.
And parts of it were very sweet, parts of it were fun. Like the main girl, it's Millie and Charlotte, I think. And Charlotte's the main girl who's been a lesbian forever and was in love with Millie when they were at uni. I really liked her. I thought she was a really cool character. Again, she's quite like a nice, like slightly different kind of character to what I usually read. But like on reflection, ick.
Oh.
Like the way that this author, so Millie like discovers she's bisexual in the book. She's not realised she was bi in the years they've been apart or anything like that. But there's a lot of like internalized homophobia. She uses the word like dyke quite a lot.
Yeah, I remember you saying this actually.
And I had to think a lot about it because I'm like, I'm not opposed to using like reading that word, but then I was like, but it's the classic thing of like, if you've been called it, you know, and I used to get called it quite a lot. Good times. So like, I'm not like instantly like offended when I see that word in a book, but then I was like, oh, but she doesn't know, she thinks she's straight. She, at this point, identifies as a straight woman. She's not even really questioning it. She's calling behaviour like all of that stuff. And like just internally, like the narration. And I'm like, I don't know if this is because the author's a sapphic woman. I'm not sure what sexuality, but she's a woman-loving woman. So I'm not sure if it's because that the author uses that word more or like, but you can't then make your character who isn't gay be like using that word the way she was. And like just the amount of like, yeah, internalized kind of homophobia and like, yeah, misogyny kind of just reeked of like that this character, it wasn't that she was necessarily coming to terms with her sexuality. It was that she was like almost offended by the thought of it before, if that makes sense. And like the way that she behaved when they were at uni in terms of kind of like leading Charlotte on a bit and all of that stuff just was like really like icky.
Yeah, it doesn't sound very good.
Yeah, you know when you're like a character is like doesn't know that they're gay or bi or whatever, and then you know bits of their behaviour like kind of make sense.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that's chill. Like obviously not everyone's going to come out of the womb knowing their sexuality.
Yeah.
That's absolutely fine. But it doesn't give you the excuse to be a prick, in my opinion. And like I can't really remember much else about it. The main thing I remember was feeling a bit uncomfortable by like the kind of internalized problems that Millie in particular goes through. I just really didn't like Millie as a character really, and on reflection it wasn't very well written really at all. And I think I was definitely just like, oh no, yeah, I enjoyed that because I needed to enjoy a book.
What's a WLW romance that you think is like the best one that you've read?
I've not read enough.
But that's what I was going to say, that I'm like, I think it's really bad, the only one I've read is the Ashley Herring Blake one.
Delilah Green.
That I didn't like.
Cleat Cute is one I read last year that I enjoyed. That was very cute.
That's the football
players.
one, isn't it?
Yeah, that was cute.
I think I'd like that one.
I think you would.
I love football.
I feel the need to read some more. I feel like there's kind of at the moment, I get a lot of...
There aren't very many that are like really mainstream, but I think that's the same for all queer ones, to be honest. Let's be honest. And
to be honest, it's hard to read in the WLW books I have read in my life. I always find there is some like biphobia in them. I don't like reading about bisexual women who are either internally biphobic or there's biphobia against them from the rest of the world, because I'm like...
Yeah, I agree.
I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I feel like it's really unnecessary. Like, we don't need to kind of, trust me, like, I know we're not the most fucking marginalised group on the planet. I'm not trying to say that, but like, there's biphobia out there. I don't want to then like read about it. Do you know what I mean?
No, I agree. Putting homophobia as a main plot point of a queer book,
Yeah.
to me feels crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, you just want to read like joyful stuff, don't you?
Because that's what all of these straight romances are like. So I'm just kind of like, why can it not be the exact same experience, but just they happen to have the same genitals?
Yeah. Cleat cute's like that.
Okay.
Again, please do send us your sapphic romance recs, because I do want to read more. This is the thing, why we read romance books, why we read like the fucking Windy City series, etc., Chestnut Springs, is for pure shits and gigs. It's for pure, I don't want to read about like, that's why then we read these books and we rip them apart, because we're like, why is there arson? Why is there, like, why are you trying to tackle all these really serious stuffs? And there are some romances that tackle serious stuff and they do it really well, but like, normally it's not to do with the love.
Yes.
I like the love to be happy, and when there's such a big instance of something that is so crucial to us being in love, which is that we are not straight, is
yeah, I mean, I think the like either like forbidden or like tortured love, or the like really sort of like toxic relationship thing, not that's what homophobia is, but you see my point, like, is very popular, but that's not really our vibe.
No.
Like, that thing of like, being like, this relationship was really hard, this like, we fight all the time, or like whatever, or like it's really forbidden, or there's like a massive really crucial reason why we can't be together but we still are. For me, I'm just like, no. Because that's what I want them to be soulmates and everything to be easy.
Yeah, they're dealing
one
with
big fight at page like 350. And no more fights ever again.
Exactly. Like you read all these romance books and it's like they'll have these fights because they're each, I don't know why this is popping into my head straight away as an example, but like, for example, let's take Get a Life, Chloe Brown, an OG, where she's dealing with her chronic illness.
Yeah.
He's dealing with coming out of an emotionally abusive relationship with his ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
They are both dealing with the repercussions of those things, which then put a strain on their relationship because of communication styles and whatever, blah, 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 and their needs. But what is there throughout the whole thing is that they like love and respect each other and fancy each other.
And are genuinely quite nice to each other.
And are genuinely quite nice to each other. And like...
they're not like, I'm really questioning a very
the
large
crucial
part of
this relationship. Yeah.
Crazy.
So like, I just don't like, and that is what was happening with Meeting Millie, is that obviously when one of them's kind of discovering they're bisexual and not completely buzzed about it, and you've got this stuff from 10 years ago where if you've ever been in love with a straight person as a not straight person and they are a really good friend, it fucking sucks. Like it's painful. So like, and you feel like a mug when the whole thing is that Millie was like, yeah, I did know you loved me. And I'm like, so why are you
so
behaving in these ways then? Like, I don't want that.
Yeah. I
just want books where there's like, where it's joyful and the love is joyful. So like, I love Schitt's Creek, for example. I think Schitt's Creek is a TV show, obviously. But they do it really well where they say like, it's not that homophobia doesn't exist in that world, but it's that no one in David's life in Schitt's Creek is homophobic. No one, they've all got different problems, and it's like no one's being like homophobia doesn't exist if it's not shown in books and TV shows. No, but it's like, it's really important to show joy and to show like queer joy.
Yeah.
So like, show me that's what I want. So if you've got, particularly sapphic, but any kind of queer romances where it's joyful, I'm not saying they don't have their own shit, one of them can have a dead dad or something, or like their dad can't love, or one of them they can be going for the same job, some shit like that, great. But I want the queerness to be joyful.
Yeah.
But my other one, Saving Six by Chloe.
Yes. Let's talk all about it.
Guys, if you know, last year I read Binding and Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh. They were fucking crazy, but the second one, fucking Keeping 13, was a slay.
These are the ones, so Alice talked about it in the 2023 wrap-up, the one where...
That was my longest book.
He's a rugby player. It's Ireland. He's a rugby player. She's just like a girl. She gets transferred from another school. She's got an abusive dad. If you remember that, this is what we're talking about. It's this series, but this book is from the perspective of her brother. Is that right?
Brother, Joey.
Who Alice was obsessed with.
Who I was obsessed with. I listened to the wrap-up the other day when we were driving, and I'm just talking about Joey for non-stop. You then talk about Outlander, and I'm like, it's exactly how I feel about Joey. And I'm like, you must shut up actually about this.
I must
shut up about this
And now I'm
fictional
like,
rugby player.
Graham Gore.
Yeah, literally. I feel about Joey how Ellen felt about Graham Gore. And
Feels, please.
Feels,
Present
sorry.
tense.
So I was they're like long books. They're so long, and I know I don't go into any of them thinking they're going to be 5 stars, but like I enjoy them. But this one took me so fucking long to read.
Months, I would say.
About a month.
Yeah,
about
crazy.
a month it took me to read Saving Six, because I was just like, this isn't Joey. I was like, this isn't my Joey. My boy, where is he?
He wouldn't do this.
He wouldn't do this. Who is this random boy you're showing me? Because that's not my Joey. So I was told it was basically a retelling of Binding 13, but from Joey's point of view. And I was like, that's a fucking waste of time. It's not completely. You go back really far. You go back to when Joey's like 11 and when he first meets Aoife, who is his girlfriend in the 13 books. So you go back and you see them, like it starts on the first day they meet in year 7. And
bear in mind, everyone, they do have a lot of sex in this book, but also at one point in the book they're in year 7.
Yeah. And it's a lot of like nice bag, nice legs sort of shit. And I'm like, you're 11. Can we not? And how they like, she's like, yeah, she's like good girl. She's like good popular girl that everyone's obsessed with. She's really pretty. She's got blonde curly hair. Blah blah blah. Classic. He's the bad boy from the estates. And he keeps getting in trouble, and no one, he's not friends with anyone really apart from her. And like it goes over fucking years, and I was like, when are we getting together? Oh, guys, because as well, something happens at the like end of the second one in Aoife and Joey's relationship. But I know that when they're 17, 18, this massive thing has happened. Yeah. So I'm like, why are they not together yet? Because this thing is happening in 6 months' time. I'm literally like, guys, come on. Because the thing that happens, I'm like, I understand it in the 13 books, but in the 6th one, I'm like, you can't be making these decisions after like however long of being together, like blah, whatever. So
yeah,
all of this stuff is happening, and I was just like, Chloe, come on, like you don't need to have. Not everyone in every single book needs to be really vulgar. Joey just wouldn't be. Like, the way that it's meant to be about, like, teenage boys saying, like, oh, yeah, you fingered her yet? Or whatever, this sort of stuff. Like in the Keeping 13 books, it's quite, like, intense the way that the group of boys kind of talk about it. But I'm like, but this is a different group of boys, and they're having the exact same conversations. Everyone's having the exact same conversations. And I'm like, we need a little bit of nuance. We need something to tell these characters apart, Chloe.
Also, I'm like, you don't need 500 pages of them being 11, 12, 13, 14. Like, I haven't even read it, and I can tell you that does not need to happen.
No. And I really like Aoife. I really liked Aoife's character in this. A lot of the stuff that she did made sense, which I can't say for any other characters in these books. Like her view of her relationship that she's in. She's in a relationship basically for ages in the book, and she like won't break up with this boy because she's basically like, well, I don't need to be in love because my parents have been married for however long, and my dad cheats my mum all the time, and like, so what's the point, but like it's done better than that, kind of, but like really, it makes sense, not really though, but it makes sense. Like her decisions kind of make sense of why she keeps going back to him. And Joey's very much like, you can't love me because I'm not good enough for you. And he, Joey works for her dad, so there's all of that kind of, he and Aoife's dad knows loads of Joey's situation because he's worked for him forever, blah blah blah. But I'm like, you just like, they just don't need to be exactly the same, the boys in particular.
Yeah.
And like, it just doesn't feel kind of like realistic to my Joey that I know from the first 2 books for him to be like kind of this. Yeah, I don't know. And so I rate it's the one I've rated the lowest.
What did you rate it?
3 stars. And the other one, but
still not bad.
I know, still not bad, still like enjoyable. But I'm just like, guys, I literally was really like, fucking hell, they're still not fucking together. And when they were, it was great. I loved it. But there's just bits where I'm like, she's writing this on like fucking. I don't know, but I assume because it's in self-published to begin with that she was writing it on like Wattpad or whatever. I've said that before. But like, just things happen where like they're having like a fight in food tech which he's really good at because he has to do all of the because he has to do all of the cooking at home because he's the man of the house because his parents are shit. And they're like messing around having a fight. At one point, like he picks her up and pops her in the sink as a joke, and then she gets stuck, so he has to lift her out of the sink. And he's like, the only way I can get you out because your hips are stuck on either side is he like reaches between her and grabs her by the crotch basically and pulls her out of the sink. And I was like, this was really unnecessary actually.
And how old are you at that point?
16.
And I'm just like, imagine seeing a 60, firstly, obviously we're not seeing 16-year-olds do things like that because that's a crime, but I'm like,
food tech.
Like, imagine imagine if you were an adult in a school and you saw a 15-year-old grab another 15-year-old
by the crotch to pull her out of the sink.
You'd be like, what are we doing?
Yeah, literally, you're like, if you have to kind of be like, it's how you watch Skins and stuff, of being like, oh, let the teenagers do whatever they want.
You can't think about the fact that they're actually teenagers because if you do, you're like, this is insane and so unrealistic that I can't actually suspend my disbelief.
Yeah, exactly. And then there are a few sex scenes where I'm like, whoa, you guys, like, not the smut, because it's minimal kind of description. It's not like reading an Elsie Silver smut scene or something because they are 16.
Yeah.
But I'm like, we don't need to be having sex while his abusive dad is pounding on the door being like, is that fucking slut in there with you? And she's like, it's okay, like she's like trying to make him feel better like with sex, but I'm like, but we don't need to be doing this. No one's having a good time, no one's coming while the dad is pounding on the door,
no one's
or like
coming.
when he's having like a really horrible come down or whatever, like there's just some really sad sex scenes and I'm like, they're like 17, this is really fucking sad.
Yeah.
Like it's not fun. Like the smut, if you can call it smut, they're books about 16-year-olds. They are for adults, these books. But like you read the when they're shagging in the books before or doing bits, whatever, when he's fingering her for the 1,000th time in the books before, it's like a bit of reprieve from all of the abuse and all of the horrors of this family and their lives. It's a bit of reprieve. You're like, yeah. Go on, gal. You
get it.
You have a nice time because it's not going to be nice when you go home. But in this one, it's like the combination. And I don't like it.
I think I said this last time. I don't understand why they have to be 16.
No.
I understand logically that 16-year-olds in real life have sex, but that's not a thing that an adult wants to read about? ? I mean, you tell me. But like,
a lot of people love these books. I think it's kind of like the found family-ness of it. But
and the drama.
But you have to suspend complete belief. Because you really like care for, like, I'm going to read the next one because I'm like, I'm going to read all of them.
Read them all. Is it going to be the same period of time?
Yeah.
No, the same period of time as Saving Six.
I fucking assume so. And I'm like, if I have to read about 11-year-old Shannon again, I'm like,
this is what I'm saying. I'm like, how many times can you read what is ostensibly the same book?
Yeah, and because it's like, well,
the same story.
But I am like, just don't give me the nods to like the whole thing of like, who's this young boy at the door? Looks like it's Johnny Kavanagh from the private school. And I'm like, yeah, I fucking know Johnny, actually. I'm well acquainted with him. I've read this timeline from his point of view. And I don't need this, actually.
I fucking know Johnny, actually.
I know Johnny well, biblically. So you're just like, oh, but kind of a slay.
You put yourself through it.
I do.
That's all I would say. And then I read Lessons in Chemistry.
Slay.
In the end, I rated it 4 stars because, I mean, partially I'm like, I don't know, I think I was very well when I was reading it and I didn't have very much tolerance and I was very tired. But like, it's such basic feminism. And that is, I think that's possibly not a very nice thing to say.
Yeah.
But it is. And
yeah.
like, I remember hearing her talk and being like, you're saying stuff that people were saying 50 years ago about women's rights. And I'm like, I don't think... And the fact is the book is set in the 50s and 60s. So I sort of understand it. I think if I'd read it with no preconceptions, I would have been like, yeah, I get it. Cool. Like, this is good. And her writing style's great. It's really funny. It's really, like, dry. A lot of really great characters. Like, the character of the dog, who's kind of, like, personified, is, like, really, like, cute and, like, really funny. And I was like, oh, my God. But, like, there's just some stuff where I was just like... Also, actually, I don't recommend you read it because she gets graphically R-worded on, like, the 5th page. Which no one has ever told me. And I was like, no one thought they should mention... like about the penetration. Really bad. Like I was like, whoa, crazy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was just like, I don't know why everyone said this book was so life-changing when it's really just like, it's the 50s and she's trying to be a scientist and they won't let her because she's a woman.
Yeah, but if you think if there are people who aren't reading, like, you know, much, who don't have the knowledge of, you know, feminism or whatever, haven't read these books that have like more kind of feminist overarching stories, or, you know, even lots of books that we read, they're not particularly like, this is a book about feminism, but there'll be like strong women and men who respect women in them, and you know, people aren't reading things like that.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
You know, because I felt like Lessons in Chemistry was like an industry plant. Like when the book came out, like I remember thinking like, this feels like with Fourth Wing, when it was everywhere. I felt like that with Lessons in Chemistry, where suddenly overnight it was fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, maybe it's because it's going to get non-readers reading it. Do you know what I mean? Is what I thought. And I
which I think might be the case.
People who don't read always tell me they've read Lessons in Chemistry.
It's hard when it's so hyped up. And then as a person who's a reader, you read it and you're like, oh, what?
Yeah.
What are we all talking about? Like I was like, it's a very good, interesting, funny, solidly written book, for sure. I rated it 4 stars.
What's high for you?
Maybe it's a 3.75, you know? But I was like, it's also not massively like an original story.
No.
She's quite Elizabeth Zott, who is the main character, is quite an original character, maybe. But the idea of it being the 50s and the 60s, or just any time in the past, and there being a woman who's a bit different, and all the men being like, fuck you, and her being like, no, and ultimately achieving her goals, is that not something we've heard a million times? That was kind of the thing for me, is I was like, why was this one so particularly revolutionary? Is it just because it's funny? I don't know. And she like does rowing. She ends up in a relationship with this guy Calvin, who's a scientist at her science place.
Yeah, science place.
Her science place. The sort of thing she says is that he's basically like, and I think this is pretty much verbatim, is that he was the only person, the only man she'd ever been in love with, because he was the only man who had ever treated her with respect, right?
Slay.
And that is true to an extent, but also he lies to her fucking loads. And I was like, this is not...
Is this respect? Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, he respects her in the sense that it was the 60s and he's like, I think you're a great scientist and I respect you and I'm not going to assault you.
Yeah.
If I compare it to, like, say, Outlander.
Yeah.
You're an Outlander, I was like, he does beat her up.
Yeah.
Right. But because you're so, like, immersed in the historical context and, like, for whatever reason, I'm not like, I can't believe he would do that. What if he was a modern man? Like, I'm like, because he's not.
Yeah, and under no instance are you being made to believe he is a modern man.
Whereas with this, it's so like, he's so far removed from how men actually would have been at that time that you just sort of are like, but he doesn't really respect her, does he? You're saying he does because he at least acknowledges that she's actually a scientist. So yeah, that really bugs me. And all the assault.
When you were speaking about them, have made me think of one book I'd like to bring up that I read this quarter, which is the Louis Ortega Survival Club by Sonora Reyes, which is a young adult book about people coming together to talk about a very popular boy at their school who has been either assaulting verbally, physically or sexually, emotionally different girls at their school. So it's really like, and it starts...
What?
Yeah.
Is that what that's about?
Yeah. And I didn't, because basically Sonora Reyes wrote The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School, which I read last year and really, really enjoyed, and handled the topics that came up in it. I felt, I mean, a lot of the topics that we're dealing with in that in particular were like homophobia in religion in particular, and then like immigration and parental support and stuff. I haven't dealt with anything to do with immigration, but I felt she handled those topics really well.
Yeah.
And so I saw it in W.H. Smith's. I didn't even know they had a new book coming out, and read the blurb. And honestly, if I'd read the blurb and it was written by anyone else, I don't think I'd have bought it.
Yeah.
But because I trusted Sonora Reyes so much, I was like, okay. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I loved the cover. I was like, okay, I'll get it. And it's young adult. So it's like, there are some points where it's not, you know, things happen that probably wouldn't happen in necessarily real life or in an adult book, but it was done so well. And the kind of I was just thinking like that is such a book that we need now. You know, you're saying about books that aren't as just the conversations we're having, but actually, particularly for a young adult book to kind of handle that this boy has done things to, we know, 4 different people, but it kind of like goes on the different, like consent in different ways. It talks about body language. It talks about, you know, like revenge porn. It talks about like all of the different ways that we now know constitute an assault or abuse or something.
Yeah.
It's not just like black and white. And there is one black or white kind of assault that is like kind of one of the first scene. And I was like, oh, I was on a train. Like I was like, oh my fucking God. Like, because the main girl is autistic and sometimes is non-verbal. And so it was the whole thing of like, well, she wasn't going to say no, was she? It was horrible, but like I finished it and like it was kind of a thing of being like, yeah, we're going to like get revenge, but actually then it becomes more about like we're healing together and what do we need to do to make consequences happen for him, sort of thing, not just us like TPing his house or whatever. A classic. And it was so well done, I thought, and to the point that I like messaged Sonora Reyes on Instagram after and was like, oh, I just want to say like I wish I had this book however like 10 years ago. And like again a depiction of someone with autism and someone who is selectively mute, really into makeup and to fashion and like she wants to fancy people, she wants to have sex, she wants to, you know, because being autistic doesn't mean that you are not interested in eyeliner or whatever it might be, or fashion or sex.
Doesn't mean you're just interested in like trains.
Yeah.
I
mean,
did they reply? Did the author reply?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because I'm just crying at my own message. But like I just said, like it is unfortunately, we're talking about assault quite a lot on this podcast today. Apologies.
Sorry.
But like you know, we've said it before to each other, you said it to people before, of that like it's the worst club to be a part of, but at least you're in a club, at least there's other people with you who like kind of you know, who can support, hopefully
that's a nice thing to say, that
you support you through it. Like I've said that to people too many times, unfortunately, of that like we've got each other, you know, sort of thing. And I said like that's the first time I've really seen that in a book, of like this kind of group of girls, and one of them's non-binary, like kind of coming together and really holding each other up through this time. And I just thought that was really powerful, as well as having like really great autistic representation, I thought, as well.
That sounds really good. What age would you say that it's suitable for, would you think? Like, do you think it's like 16 plus?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Do you have any other books you want to talk about?
I was just going to do a couple of honourable mentions.
Please do.
Do you know what, actually? Honourable mentions to everything.
Yeah, you've had a great time.
I might just... Is it crazy? Is it crazy to just list all the other things I've read? Okay. Piglet by Lottie Hazel. Really good.
So good.
I didn't like it as much as Alice did.
No,
but I did still really like it. The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo.
That was a crazy day.
Crazy. I didn't think it was going to be so good.
I couldn't believe that
because Alice absolutely panned Six of Crows.
No, loved Six of Crows. Ninth House can get fucked.
But you think Six of Crows is good?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Really well written, excellent historical fiction, also magical. The romance in it, I was like, fucking slay. Hard by a Great Forest by Leo Vardishvili, who is a Georgian author. No one I know has read this book.
No.
It's really good. Loads of stuff about the Georgian Civil War, though. So up to you whether you want to be Googling stuff. I found it really interesting, really well written, quite like cerebral, is how I would describe it. Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. Best fucking book I've ever read. Oh my God. 4 stars.
That's your number one book of the year.
So good. Great. Can't wait for the sequel.
That's a big win for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I fucking love that you...
I'm really glad that I liked it.
I'm so glad that you liked it, because it's such an enjoyable, like, comfort read. It's very comforting, isn't it?
Penance by Eliza Clark.
Another slay.
What a fucked up book that is.
I know, but so good.
Highly recommend it, but like trigger warning for like fucking everything you could think of, basically.
Everything you could possibly imagine.
But so interesting, and I loved the format.
Yeah.
Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. Fucking hell, guys. It is out now, is that correct? Yeah. Really good. I love an angsty romance, though. I'm not sure if you're going to like it as much as I did, but I really enjoyed it.
I've got it to be like my next read, but I keep thinking that actually every Ali Hazelwood book I've read hasn't necessarily been a super quick read.
I think the sex scenes in it are very interesting sex scenes. Bit of a mix-up.
It's more of her, she says, doesn't it, it's more erotica than her other books.
Massively.
Yeah.
The Future by Naomi Alderman. Now, 4.75.
Crazy.
Great book. Naomi Alderman wrote The Power, which turns out loads of people didn't like that book.
Yeah.
I thought it was great.
I really liked it.
And Disobedience.
Love Disobedience.
Great book.
Disobedience is such a good book. We also must say, of course, on top of these books, we read It Happened One Summer, Wild Love and Funny Story. Episodes out now, guys. Go and watch them.
You shout out the rest of your...
Iron Flame, a classic.
Episode may be coming soon. Alice said that she's not as scared.
I'm not as
anymore.
scared. I'm not as scared. I'm getting less scared.
Guys,
So
leave comments saying you want to hear Iron Flame. That'll make her do it.
please don't.
Leave comments. Send emails.
Brother,
Subject, Iron Flame now.
Brother, Do You Love Me by Manny Coe and Ruben Coe.
That's got to be on my TBR for sure.
Yeah, that's a really, really amazing book. It's about
I need to crack out some non-fiction.
a brother, two brothers. One of them has Down syndrome, and he was living in a adult care facility during the pandemic and basically had a breakdown. So his brother moved back from Spain to kind of take him out of the home, look after him, and help like get his voice back. Like he went mute, and it is like painful. It's it's so well written, and it really annoys me when people are really good writers and it's actually just not his day job. It's not Manny Coe's like day job before that, and I'm like, fuck you for being so good at writing. Like so well written. And then the brother Ruben has loads of his drawings in there that he's done, and again just the way it's told, like the kind of flow and the narrative is really, really well done. Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors.
Low rating.
Not a fucking low. Anytime I read something 3.5 or 3.75, you're like, terrible then, was it?
Yeah, though.
No, I liked Blue Sisters, okay, guys, I liked Blue Sisters, but I did not like it nearly as much as I like Cleopatra and Frankenstein. It just didn't hit. It's told from the perspective of three different sisters after one of the fourth sister has died, and I did just find myself being like, I want to get back to my favourite sister. Do you know what I mean? Like when I was reading the other sisters, I was like, guys, come on. But again, if you're a sister, there will be lines. If you're a sister with a sister, do you know what I mean? I don't know how it would hit for brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Where I was like, ow. And I cried. I did cry. But I read Safi's Angel by H0rny McKay. Obviously. Slay. Best young adult children's book ever written. And I'll die on that hill.
Yeah.
Truly, truly fantastic time. And then Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, which, guys, shut the fuck up. Everyone shut the fuck up. So
Don't
good.
spoil it. I want to read it like next week.
Okay, I won't spoil it, but I will just say, I tried to read Yours Truly last year, and I got about 100 pages in and was like, I'm not.
Meh.
I just put it down and was like, meh. But I'm going to try it again. Abby Jimenez's writing style is, she talks a lot in the past tense, I think.
Right.
In the narration. And I don't think that always hits as hard for me as what I've noticed. I don't like that as much, is past tense narration, I've discovered.
What do you like? Present tense?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Interesting.
I'm not sure. I don't know, but it stood out to me as I didn't like it.
Yeah.
But the main guy is the definition of if he wanted to, he would. He's such a slay. He is such a slay. Handled like really difficult topics again, I thought, with a lot of like care and grace. And it was very much sort of that thing of like, the main character is so good at giving advice to other people and being like a real like empathetic friend, but can't take any of her own advice and can't set her own boundaries. And I was like, wow, I don't know anyone like that. There was one line, and this isn't really a spoiler, but I'm going to say it. Because I had it in my head that I'm going to say it. So that the main guy, Justin, he is about to take on, I know, this is going to ruin the tour. What tour? The world tour. Justin is about to take guardianship of his three younger siblings because his mum is...
Oh my god, spoilers!
It's really early on that you find that out.
Okay.
Really, like...
Okay.
And they're talking about, like, well, how her mental health must have been at that time, because they're talking about mental health. And he goes... Oh, so because he's not able to be very sympathetic to his mother at all in this time. And he's like, oh, what? So she just like got so depressed that she blah, blah, blah. And Emma goes, Justin, people get so depressed that they kill themselves. And I was just like, oh, you know, when you're like,
that's really good.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I was like, that's such a good line.
Yeah.
Like, and I just was not in a great place when I was reading it. I was feeling quite low anyway. And it was literally a moment where I had to like put the book down and be like, oh my fucking God. People are so depressed that they kill themselves.
Yeah.
So of course people do crazy things when they are feeling really, really low or dealing with really bad mental health. The whole book is basically about like, if you can be empathetic instead of angry, you know, choose empathy, basically. And as an empath, I just fucking loved that. And that line, I just kept thinking about it for like days. And then again, like the miscommunication and the third act conflict all just made sense because all of the things she'd so cleverly built up. And I just think it's a really, really good book.
Okay, I'm up for
Loved.
it.
So yeah, my other books that I read that I think we've spoken about, It Happened One Summer, I read The Ministry of Time, Wild Love, Funny Story, Iron Flame, and we've spoken about everything else. So yeah.
Great.
So I'm pretty happy with the quality of what I read.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. Let us
Thank
know
you.
what you've been reading in the last 3 months.
Please do. You can comment on this episode on Spotify if you want.
Yeah.
If that's the easiest way. Don't forget to follow us everywhere. Don't forget you can email us. Don't forget about Ko-fi. I hope you're enjoying the apps. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. In general, we're still going.
Somehow.
Really proud of us.
Yeah. 7
months in.
Good job.
Good
Doing
job.
well.
Yes.
Yes. See you later. Love you.
Bye.
Bye.